Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Live around the world on the internet at MichaelDukesShow.com and across the state of Alaska on this your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Good morning and welcome to Monday. Oh man. It's how does the weekend go so fast? Right? I mean, is it just me or is it like, wow, that was quick? I know. I just wanted one more day to sleep. But that's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Here we are doing our thing. That does remind me that I will be taking one more day a week from today. Next Monday, I just discovered that I will be traveling. And so I will be not on the air next Monday. We will have alternate programming in all the various markets and for all the various radio stations and or FM translators around the state of Alaska. And so it will be, I will not be here next Monday. So I've got to send all the appropriate emails this morning, but I wanted to let you know first. You guys are the first to know. So there you go. It's, I'm just somebody in the chat room just said it's unacceptable. I'm sorry. I don't think the police would like me to broadcast from the car while I'm driving so it is what it is. Good morning. Hello. How are you? Are you ready for this bright sunshiny day? I mean, it's getting to that point now. By the way, we lost that hour this week. Oh my God. I hate, is hate is too strong a word? I severely dislike daylight savings time. It's always good in the fall when you fall back a little bit and get that extra hour. But boy, when you lose that 1 hour in the middle of the weekend, you wouldn't think that it would make that big a difference, but man. All right. So what do we got going on today? What do we got going on this week? Well, today, we've got some stories here this morning, including the latest. Oh man, we made headlines across the country this weekend, and not in a good way. Not in a good way. And we'll talk about that. What's going on down in Anchorage at Dimond High School. Which, let's just say it's, reason number, 468 why you probably should homeschool your kids. I'm just saying. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the latest push on Social Security. This new study out of UAF that is talking about, wait for it, coal-fired, how a coal-fired power plant is the answer for the South Central energy crisis, which has got some people rankled. I mean, just rankled. Speaking of rank, how about the new ranked choice voting lawsuit? Scooter Kendall at it again, asking a judge for a pre-election ruling to try and disqualify it from the ballot. Why? Because they're terrified. They're terrified that this thing is going to get yanked yoinked off the thing. What else? Oh, there's a new story about a new Senate bill that would stop the public notice in the newspapers. And I guess that's it. I guess that's all it. That's all hour one this morning, which means that's a full hour, man. That's a big hour. Because in hour two, Sarah Montalbano will be joining us from the Alaska Policy Forum. We are going to talk about the public education at a crossroad report from Alaska's specific profile from that report. We're also going to talk about how Arizona Governor Katie Hobbs wants to take the state of Arizona has the kind of the first of its kind, student funding, where it's kind of a backpack funding model, and they've had just these tremendous gains, and yet she wants to rip those out as well. She wants to submarine that. This is, again, just another point of politicians, labor unions, and the education industrial complex wanting to have their hand at the tiller no matter how badly it affects the outcome. And so we're going to talk about that with Sarah in hour two today. Sarah Montalbano will be our guest this morning on the program. And that's hours ago. What was the other thing I wanted to say? This decision for kudos where kudos is due. The Alaska Supreme Court, who I have not been the largest fan of over the last decade or so, has finally made a ruling that I can get behind. The new Supreme Court ruling comes from a case that dates back to 12 years ago, when troopers received a tip from an informant that a guy named John McKelvey was growing marijuana in his property north of Fairbanks. According to the ruling, McKelvey's property was heavily wooded with a driveway leading to a clearing where a house and greenhouse were located. The trees there blocked the ground level view of the buildings from outside the clearing, and a gate blocked cars from entering. In the court's recounting of the case, two troopers followed up on the trip and flew past the property and used a camera with a high-powered zoom lens to take photos that showed buckets containing unidentifiable plants inside the greenhouse. So, I mean, because flying a plane with a high zoom lens, can you imagine traveling at 90 miles an hour in the sky with a zoom lens that's, anyway, unidentifiable plants inside the greenhouse. Based on the tips and the flight observations, a search warrant for McKelvey's property was obtained. During the search, they found items including marijuana plants, methamphetamine scales, a rifle, and cash. He fought to have the evidence suppressed. He was convicted in one count of third-degree misconduct involving a controlled substance and a weapons misconduct count. He appealed, arguing the judge wrongly denied his motion to suppress. The appeals court reversed the Superior Court judge, and the Supreme Court affirmed the appeal court decision released on Friday. The state maintained that because small airplane travel is so common in Alaska, and because any passenger might peer into your yard and snap a picture of you, law enforcement officials may do the same. But the court disagreed, saying that the Constitution protects the right to be free of unreasonable searches. The fact that a random person might catch a glimpse of your yard while flying from one place to another does not make it reasonable for law enforcement officials to take to the skies and train high-powered optics on the private space right outside your home without a warrant. And I would assume that this would also cover drones, because drones are aircraft. Law enforcement officials must obtain a warrant before using aircraft and vision-enhancing technologies, such as cameras with zoom lenses or binoculars, to surveil the area surrounding a person's home that's protected from ground-level observation, the court said. Most land in Alaska is not considered curtilage of the home, where the right to privacy is strongest. Therefore, authorities are not necessarily restricted from using aircraft and vision-enhancing technology to surveil those areas, the court said. Curtilage refers to the area in and around the home. The attorney for McKelvey called the ruling a tremendous decision to protect the rights of privacy of Alaskans and hopefully set an example for the rest of the country. Spokesperson for the Department of Law said the agency is reviewing the decision, but to which all I can say is, hear, hear, bully, bully, bully. And I know he's probably not the most sympathetic of petitioners when he had marijuana, meth, scales, and a gun on his property, but by God, I would rather have, what was it that what's Franklin's quote? That he would rather have 100 guilty men go free than one innocent man wrongly imprisoned or something like that. Anyway, it's good news. I would say that is good news for Alaskans and their right to privacy, which I'm super excited about. What's the other bill? Or what's the other story? There's a story in the Must Read Alaska talking specifically about a new Senate bill that would basically modernize public notice regulations and eliminate the requirement that some notices for the sale, appropriation, or removal of water will not need to be published in newspapers. They can be published online at the state's public notice website. Now, for those of you who don't know or haven't been following this along the years, the government is required to post public notices for a lot of things. Different bills, agendas, public meetings. There's a lot of stuff that they're required to post. And they've been required to post it in the newspaper, in a printed newspaper, for a long time. But things have changed. And most importantly, I think to acknowledge in that regard, is that not only has the way we consume news changed, but also the way that the paper industry itself has transformed. In the story from Must Read, they make the example that the Juneau Empire now only prints 2 editions a week. They used to print 9,000 papers a day, 6 days a week. Now it's down to 1,500 copies on Wednesdays and 1,800 copies on Saturdays, which means if you put a public notice in there, it's not seeing nearly the same amount of eyeballs. And the ADN is down to printing 5 days a week as well. And they don't really publish their numbers, but the bankruptcy proceedings in 2017 said it was down to about 28,000. And it's probably a lot less now. Based on my resubscription cost that they tried to sneak in on me, they're obviously trying to find ways to make money however they can. So they're also reducing their footprint and the number of, the whole justification is that if you put it in the paper, everybody's going to read that public notice. How many times have you gone to a paper and read the public notice section? Anybody? The argument is there are better ways to do it, including the websites, the public websites, for different departments, divisions. There's a lot of ways to find public notice. And that it can be expensive to do so. Senate Bill 68, recognizing that most newspapers have most of their readers online anyway, calls for the publishing the notices in the Alaska Online Public Notice System by mail and by means as deemed necessary, by other means. Of course, the Fairbanks Daily News Miner is opposed to the change. The Anchorage Daily News is opposed to the change. Pretty much any print newspaper which has been generating revenue from the state of Alaska by printing public notices in the back of the paper, in these little teeny tiny squares in the back of the paper. And they know that they have to publish it by law, so they can charge them, kind of whatever they want. Question mark. I mean, this is something that should have changed, has needed to change for years. There's a change to it. And so I don't know if I'm all spun up about this, but I think that this is needed to be changed for years, and it just makes sense to do this, because again, when was the last time any of you, even those of you who take the newspaper, it just went and went back into the back of the section of the newspaper and read all the public notices just out? It's just not something that you normally do. The stuff is there if you want to go check it out, but we'll see. It it is what it is. All right, so that was the other story that was caught my attention right off the gate, and that leads us over to the break. Yeah, baby. All right, we're going to continue. Sarah Montalbano, our guest, in hour 2. Meanwhile, we're going to fight the Battle of the Bulge. The Battle of the... in the schools. The Battle of the... You're not going to believe this. All right, this is up next. The Michael Dukes Show. Common sense. Liberty-based. Free-thinking radio. Oh, yeah.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes On Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Well, hello, my pretties, and your little dogs, too. What's going on here? Use public callers like "hear ye" in the public squares. There you go. I'm all about that. I'm all about that. Will you be in Fairbanks this weekend? There's dog races going on in the Mushers Hall. Yes, I will be. He said with unexpected vigor. Yes, I will be in Fairbanks announcing. I love to do the dog races, but I don't know what it is. But I'm not super excited to do it this weekend. This week. It's been a long couple weeks. Let's just put it that way. And the weekend was not nearly weekendy enough. Let's just put it that way. I did not get my weekend recharge as I would hoped. So anyway. Good morning. You need an attitude adjustment. Ooh, okay. Well, you can't tell me what to do. Kenai got a couple of inches. Morgan LaFace says BS. I don't know what for, but okay. Told you, says Kevin. Coal-fired power, baby. Hundreds of years of clean coal available. Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting. Going through here. I would love to build more hydro plants. I'd love to build some hydro plants. District 7's convention Saturday was a complete disaster. People slipped in an illegal voter. You can't vote at a convention unless you've been registered as Republican for 90 days. That's 90, not 30. And shame on 2 previous district chairs, one Alaska GOP secretary and Sultana city councilman, who tried to bend the rules in their favor. The illegal voter was exposed. Oh, that must have been some exciting times in the old corral there. That must have been. Gary says it's all about the Fourth Amendment, illegal search. Yeah, I like that. All right. Who went to sleep Friday night, woke up Monday morning. What weekend? That's right. Yeah. So you're going to Musher's Fun Day, then stiffing us on Monday, so we get baptized by Brad on Tuesday. Ugh. Well, the good news is that I'll be doing that, and you still get your Thursday and Friday shows, even though I'm traveling. I've organized my travel so that I can be there. I'll just be honest with you. Here's how it normally goes down. Normally, sorry about that. Normally, I travel on Thursday after I do the show. I immediately climb into the car and I drive to Fairbanks. And then I get set up and I do everything. And then I do the show Friday morning, and then I do the dog races, and I do the dog races, and I do the dog races all the way through Sunday. And immediately after the dog races are done at 4 p.m. on Sunday, I climb back into my car and I drive home. And get home at 11 o'clock at night after being out all day, doing the dog races, outside, doing all that stuff. I drive all the way home, and then I get up at, the crack of dawn, 4:30 that Monday morning, the next day. And I hate to tell you this, Jeannie, but I'm getting old. I can't do the turn and burns anymore as much as I want to. It gets to be a little too dangerous to try and I'm wore out by Sunday, and I just need a little break. So that's how it works. All right, here we go. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty based.
Public enema number one. Oh, wait, sorry. Public enemy number one, which makes more sense. On the other hand, he's a little bit of a pain in the Michael Duke Show.
Oh, hello. Welcome back to the program. Hour one Now I'm being chastised because I'm too young. You're not even a boomer. Please, you can't be tired. You're not even a boomer. Okay, all right. I'm sorry. I'm just, sorry that I... Anyway, welcome back to the program. Monday edition of the Michael Duke Show. We got a lot of stuff here going on, and we are diving into it. What's the next story? The Battle of the Bulge. And no, I'm not talking about that famous battle in Europe. I am talking about the Battle of the Bulge and in Anchorage at Dimond High School. Anchorage school districts made the news again in the national news this time, and not in the good way. The Libs of TikTok, which is contrary to the sound of its name, is a account on TikTok that tries to expose liberal behavior, not highlight or celebrate liberal behavior. They caught wind of what was going on at Dimond High School, which is apparently that how do I say this? Biologically male teacher? I guess biologically male teacher is how I should put this. Named Fletcher. Was a subject of a video that was circulating on X or Twitter, in which he dresses in dresses, which is, first and foremost, that's one thing, but apparently super tight dresses that expose the bulge of his, of his stuff and things. And this apparently, it's all part and parcel. This was the teacher that was basically put on leave and suspended last week and created kind of a fervor. It's all part and parcel of it. The video, and there's pictures and video of him hovering next to a student with the prominent bulge hovering next to the student's hand. It's the weirdest thing. I get a little heebie just talking about it. But on top of that, it's been exposed that he has apparently an OnlyFans account where he goes into the whole cross-dressing, non-binary, gender confusing thing. So, and not just his OnlyFans account. He's got a social. He was posting provocative photos on his Facebook page as well. Which, again, I understand you should be allowed to have some freedom of expression, but you also have to understand that in your profession, you might want to think about what that would do to your public image as a teacher working with children. Anyway, the reaction from the community that is trying to defend him is interesting to say the least. It social media users in Alaska have been reacting to the must-read Alaska stories about the Dimond High School teacher in Anchorage who, according to the social media account Libs of TikTok, seems to have a side activity as a porn content provider and has worn tight dresses to class that exhibits the shape of his genitalia as he towers over students. The spin, though, coming back, a few of the comments defending this teacher includes attacks directly on the Libs of TikTok, which is the same bigoted POS account that was quite significantly involved in New Benedict getting jumped in the bathroom and dying the next day. This is the transgendered student that got killed in that bathroom brawl here recently. But basically, the other one was the takeaway should be, number one, that we pay teachers crap so that they have to do things like OnlyFans to make money, because apparently you can't make it on $55,000+ a year, apparently. And now that was number one. And number two, why is the student taking pics of a teacher at all? So long as it isn't illegal, a teacher or anyone for that matter should be able to spend their free time however they want to. Well, I mean, I would mostly agree with that. I would. But all of a sudden now you're shaming the student, because there were several pictures of Fletcher standing around with his his prominent bulge from kids in the classroom. If they're pointing it out, they're obviously noticing, which maybe was the intent to begin with, question mark. I mean, if they're noticing it, then they're taking pictures, but now we're going to chastise the student for taking the picture. The commentators are also saying that Fletcher only had to do OnlyFans just to pay rent. Sad we pay teachers so little they have to subsidize their income doing OnlyFans, but it says more about the people seeking out their OnlyFans to blast them than it does about the teacher. Again, the average a step zero teacher, which is the lowest step, the first entry, $55,000 a year in salary, and that's only working for 182 days. $55,000 in salary alone plus benefits. Now, that's not a lot, but you're telling me that you can't make it on $55,000 a year, plus you've got another 3 or 4 months where you can do other things like, tutoring, tourism, retail. You don't have some kind of side hustle or things you can do in the summer. But I mean, just even if you make it up to, the step 4, not step 20, which is the highest at $97,000, but even at step 4, you make $74,000. I just, the proclivity to go in there and here's the thing, and this may be crazy to you, but if some teacher wanted to do OnlyFans or whatever in their spare time, and as long as it didn't cross over in any way, I guess more power to them if that's what they want to do. But if that same teacher, let's just say a female teacher, was dressing provocatively, in front of students, or it would just no. Why would you do that? That's just it's so weird. It's so weird. Oh yeah, that was one of the other comments. They're just being exposed to diversity. Oh no, think of the kids. They're being exposed to diversity. We need to do better. We'd hate for them to grow up being compassionate and understanding of people's differences. Well, I mean, all about understanding people's differences, but if you're walking around with your bulge at table level while my kids are there and they're towering over you can go look at the pictures if you want. The pictures paint 1,000 words, of ick at this point. But again, like I said earlier, reason number 462 why I was happy to homeschool my kids, so they didn't have to get all. It's just weird, man. It's just weird. Why would you do that? Why? Well, I mean, I guess I can't. He's a man dressing in tight dresses, which was already weird for me personally. You do you, guy. I mean, you do you. You want to do that? But, and then on top of it, it's not just wearing a dress, but a tight dress with a prominent protuberance. That's just weird. It wasn't just exposing the bulge of his junk. He obviously had, and he was obviously, I can't even say the word right now. You can't dehumanize people. It's okay for Congress members to have OnlyFans accounts. What's the difference? Anybody can have, you can do whatever you want, but don't expect when it's discovered or when there's a connection made that there might not be repercussions in your job, right? Or in the way people treat you. That's the thing. I mean, aroused. There you go, Brian. Thank you. That's what I was looking for. That was the word that I was looking for. He wasn't just exposing his bulge. It was the fact that he was aroused in the pictures, that's just, I don't even know what to say at this point. All right. How many female teachers have been fired for inappropriate clothing or for working part-time at a strip club, etc.? I don't know if there's a morals clause in the teaching contract. I've never looked at it that closely, but I mean, many businesses have a morals clause that basically says you have to, not, through your actions, you can't besmirch the blah, 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 blah. Maybe that's what it is, but you have to understand that if you do something like that, you should be free to do whatever you want. But also understand that it's going to change people's perception of you. No one was harmed, says Susan. No one was harmed. I'm sick. No one was harmed. Well, it's possible that I'm sick, or that I would think that maybe the kids being exposed to that might be part of the problem. Maybe that's just me. There is a morals clause in the professional ethics that applies to teachers, says David. So there you go. Okay. Well, we get to go. We're up against the break, so we're going to continue here in just a moment. Interesting. It's an interesting conundrum. But again, I never had to deal with that because I homeschooled all my kids. There you go. That just another reason right there. All right. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Back with more after this.
running on 100% pure beard power. Oh, also some coffee. We dip our beard in coffee.
Ha, nice beard.
The Michael Duke Show.
Okay. Susan, I'm sorry you're offended, but to me, you can't dehumanize people, she says. When this person is harmed, then what? Are you talking about when Fletcher is harmed? Why would Fletcher be, obviously there's something going on here. And we don't know everything that's going on. The pictures that surfaced of him walking around with an erection under his dress is, well, disturbing. If Susan, if you're okay with somebody walking around with a prominent erection in front of kids trying to teach kids in high school, it's weird. It's just weird. Whether he was wearing a dress or whether he was wearing sweatpants, I don't care. In this context, it's a little weird to my mind, to my sensibilities. But hey, you do you. But the fact that they're walking around aroused in that regard around teens and children is a little disturbing, right? You're attacking a person, targeting a person on. It's a news story, Susan. It's a news story. I'm not attacking anybody. I'm laying out the facts as they're being presented and as it's been written. So if that offends your feelings, bye. I mean, it's not, that's not what it is. I don't know what else to tell you. There you go. So you're cool with somebody walking around sticking their boner in kids' faces, figures. No, that's, I don't know. She said she's defending a human being. Stop criminalizing a person for wearing clothes. I don't think he's been there. He's been there for several years, right? I mean, he's not a new teacher. So they obviously knew that this is, he's been allowed to wear those clothes for a while. I think it was the behavior in the clothes, not the clothes themselves. It appears to me from what I'm reading, and again, I don't have all the facts, but based on the facts that are available at the time, that, it looks like that it was his behavior and not the, wasn't the dressing, it was the behavior and the other things. Susan says, not my feelings. You're putting a bullseye on her back. Well, she identifies as a he, is what I've read, that it's a cross-dressing. It's not a gender fluid thing, but I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't assume. He taught in Homer and did the same thing, says Terry. Okay. So again, this is not anything new. But, you have the right to feel offended, Susan. You have the right to feel offended. That's okay. I mean, I think you're wrong, but you still have the right to feel offended. Especially after looking at some of those pictures. That just bothers me. Again, not the clothing so much as the rest of it. That's the problem. That's the part that I have the problem with. Did he get fired from Homer? Why did he get fired? I don't know if he got fired from Homer. The first time I read the name was on Friday. So I don't know anything about it other than what I was reading in the various outlets. Can we get out of the gutter? I'm mad you're putting a target on a minority group. What? Which minority group? The pedophiles or the cross-dressers? Again, this was my question, right? It doesn't have necessarily to do with the dressing as it does with the arousal. That was problematic. If somebody wants to do an OnlyFans in their spare time, more power to them. Okay? More power to them. I don't care. That's not the point. And it's the kids. I mean, it's children, Susan. It's amazing how it's all about the children until we get the whole sexuality thing involved, and then they're old enough to make their own decision. But other than that, it's about protecting the children. So, I mean, I don't know what minority group you're talking about, but there you go. All right, we're going to move on from this. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Like, share, subscribe, ring the bell, do all that stuff. Let's do it.
The Michael Duke Show. Not your daddy. Wait, sorry. Not your daddy? Ooh, not your daddy's talk radio. Whew. I was scared for a second. Thought we were going down. Here's Michael Dukes and the show.
Woo! All right, welcome back. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We are going to be joined by Sarah Montalbano from the Alaska Policy Forum in hour 2 of the big radio show today. So just about 20 minutes or so, we'll be joined by her. We're going to talk about the Public Educations at a Crossroad report, the Alaska specific profile. And we're also going to talk about how backpack funding has been working for Arizona, but now Governor Katie Hobbs wants to dismantle that because this again, it's working too well. They want to dismantle it because they don't have control. They being the politicians and the unions and the education industrial complex doesn't have their hands on the tiller, and they don't like that. So we'll talk about that with Sarah Montalbano this morning here in about 20 minutes or so. We'll be picking it up with her and seeing what's going on. We covered that. Let's talk about Scooter Kendall. Scott Kendall, who is representing Alaskans for Better Elections. That is the pro ranked choice group that poured $7 million in funds into Alaska, trying to teach people about the dangers of dark money, while actually pitching a reformed ranked choice voting scheme, has now asked a Judge Laura Hartz to speed up a case and issue a verdict during the campaign season about the APOC fine. The Alaska Public Offices Commission ruled month before last, January, that the group that was trying to repeal ranked choice voting, which is Alaskans for Honest Elections and others, had illegally sent campaign money through an organization registered as a church. APOC fined the group more than $94,000 and ordered that they make regular public disclosures. That pro-repeal group appealed APOC's decision to state courts in February, and under the normal course of events, a judge would rule sometime next year. But this week, attorneys, including Scott Kendall, asked the judge to speed up the case. Kendall said it's important to his client that the pro-repeal side be required to post accurate information about the source of its money. I mean, this is the same dark money people that, never mind. It doesn't even matter. The Alaska Division of Elections is expected to formally certify the ballot measure this month that would repeal the state's open primary election and its ranked choice general election. Certification would clear the way for the repeal measure to appear in November in the general election ballot. Now, the only reason that Scooter and company are really fighting back against this is because they are terrified that Alaska will repeal the ranked choice voting contingent if it goes to the ballot. They want to prevent this from going to the ballot however they can. The two sides appeared in Anchorage Superior Court on Wednesday for a 45-minute scheduling conference with Judge Hartz, who said she will rule next week on the request for a speedy decision. The timing issue comes down to, for the court, whether it matters for the purposes of the upcoming election, she said. The Alaska Department of Law attorney Katie DeMarst is also in Wednesday's hearing representing the state regulators. Speaking to the judge, she said that there are issues of liability and disclosures at play in the court. She said, I do think that there are issues that the court needs to resolve and that the Supreme Court ultimately needs to hear, and those are things that need to be done before the election. We'll see what's going on. Hart's appointed as a judge by Dunleavy last year said that if she does approve speedy consideration, she may need until June 21st or so to issue a final determination. She and the other attorneys involved in the case said they expect her decision will be appealed to the Supreme Court. She said, if I tell you if it were up to me, I'm going to be jammed up doing this quickly, but I want to do right by the people of Alaska, which, I mean, that sounds like a reasonable. Doing right by the people of Alaska sounds like a good yardstick to hold yourself to. Absolutely. Sounds like a good one to hold yourself to. Oh, and finally, this story, which I just had to chuckle about because. A study from the University of Alaska Fairbanks recommends that a coal-fired plant be built in the south central area to generate electricity for the rail belt. So says Sean McGuire and Amy Bouchatz of the ADN. The state legislators have been considering measures to deal with the shortfall in Cook Inlet natural gas. The UAF, they're going to import the gas, right? Large scale imported has been touted as the solution, but legislators learned last month that it will likely only start being available in 2030. So 6 years from now. The UAF feasibility study published last week assumes that a coal power plant would be built off the contentious West Susitna access road near proven coal seams. And it assumes the plant would be fitted with carbon capture and storage technology, CCS, which would allow the carbon emissions to be stored underground. UAF was recently awarded a separate $11 million grant to determine whether coal-fired power with CCS would be considered environmentally friendly. They still need $2 million from the state to proceed. This is so apparently a $13 million study to see whether CCS technology would be environmentally. I thought that was settled science. I thought they said that sequestration was the way to go. Meanwhile, the National Renewable Energy Laboratory released a report with a different conclusion. That it said it appears that the least cost option would come from generating 75% of the railbelt's power with renewable resources by 2040. Well, I mean, that's great, except for what kind of renewables are we talking about? If we're talking about hydro, then yeah, I mean, I think I mean, here's the thing. I don't understand why we aren't doing more hydro and nuclear. Those two things, which are for the investment, the kilowatt investment, it makes sense. Renewables, solar, wind, things like that, the amount of energy consumed in creating those components for the amount of lifespan that in many cases, especially with some of the solar components, the amount of energy consumed in producing the equipment itself, the panels, etc., is, in many cases, the equipment doesn't generate, it may generate, only 200% of what it takes to make it. So it takes it takes 50% of what the thing will make over its lifetime to produce it in plastics and energy and, copper, molybdenum, heavy metals, rare earths, all this kind of stuff. All those things, it takes a tremendous amount of energy to produce those items. And in some cases, they barely break even on their manufacturing, on the energy and the materials used to manufacture them. They're a great idea, but they're not going to save the world in the long run. Also because, by the way, the wind and the solar, that's variable stuff. It's not consistent. It's not like a flowing river. It's not like nuclear power. It's not like burning coal or gas. It's inconsistent. It's consistently inconsistent, I guess I should say. Anyway, one of the interesting things, the total cost to build and operate a 300 megawatt coal power plant with CCS over 30 years was estimated to be about $6 billion. But that cost would be reduced with federal subsidies because the plant is expected to take 6 to 8 years to start operating once design work begins. So we're already 6 to 8 years away from 10 years. I mean, it'll be 10 years before maybe even longer. The Matsu Borough Assembly passed a resolution saying it was okay. Here's what got me. Chris Rose, executive director of Renewable Energy Alaska Project, or REAP, said he's not read the report, but questioned the high cost. Wait a second. You haven't read the report, but you question the high cost and touted the low environmental impact of a new coal-fired plant in the Matsu. He questioned the high. He said the new plant would not help the region's immediate. I haven't read it, but boy, let me tell you what's wrong with it. Just thought that was. Instead, he pointed to a major wind power project proposed outside of Anchorage that developers could say could provide 20% of the city's power. Well, okay. I mean, that's okay. All right. Anyway, this battle is going to continue. You know what's going on. But the UAF came out with this new plan, new power plant. We've got some of the cleanest burning coal in the world. I mean, it's still dirty, but it's not, it's still clean compared to the other one. We got to go. The Michael Duke Show. Common Sense, Liberty Based, Free Thinking Radio. Sarah Montalbano up next, our guest, hour 2. Okay. Kyle's got more reasons than I do. Reason number 1275 why you should homeschool. What the heck did I sign on to? Clock only said 5:30. Ooh, hey, you forgot. Daylight savings time, baby. Rick apparently got caught by the daylight savings time bug. Okay. Who's cooking? I smell bacon and eggs. I don't know. I would love that. Missed that clock. Okay. I'm going through here. By the Bulge. Okay. All but the equipment is made in China. Oh, that was the other thing. The equipment is made in China using coal-fired electrical plants. That's the thing. I mean, these people are all about the environment and how that's going to save everything. But do you realize how much mining has to go into producing all these various components, from the batteries with the lithium and the molybdenum and all that stuff, the cobalt, the copper to put in all these panels and everything. I mean, the amount of coal and diesel that's burned to mine all these things to then create the clean energy. I saw a thing on this about 2 years ago where they actually talked about the life cycle of like a solar panel and how much energy it takes to create and how much energy that panel could create over its lifespan. and it's like neck and neck. It's crazy. It's crazy. All right. They're actually about 12% efficient, don't work, and are actually negative and below temp features and don't work with snow on them or when the wind ain't blowing. It's a problem. It's a problem. That's the thing. Rick said, yeah, too many stupid clocks. He said the worst was the coffee clock. Well, you should have sprung forward. You should have been woken up by the smell of coffee if you missed it with your coffee maker and you missed it because we leapt forward. You should have been waking up going, why do I smell coffee? It's only 5 o'clock in the morning. No, it's 6 and that coffee's ready, baby. It's ready. All right. I see the lovely and talented Sarah Montalbano is in the green room. She's ready to join us. Let's go should we test the connection before the top of the hour thing? Let's go do that. All right. We're going to add her to the chat. Hello. Good morning. Hello. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing pretty well. How about yourself?
Oh my gosh, you are loud and proud today. Let me edit this down.
I'm so sorry.
No.
I plugged in my podcast microphone.
Oh, you're doing good. You're doing good. I just need to reduce you from what you normally have been doing because, oof, man, you're like right here next to me in my ears. Oof. You're in my head. Get out of my head. All right. How are you been?
Oh, not too bad. Busy as always.
Yeah, I bet you're busy. Okay. So we're going to talk a little bit about the Public Education Crossroads Report in Alaska specifically. I do want to touch on this article from Reason, which I sent this to Sarah a couple weeks ago, and we were going over it, this whole school choice thing, how it's doing great things in Arizona, yet the governor not satisfied because they don't have their hand on the tiller. They want to rip it all back down, which is interesting. And more. So we'll talk about that. Yes, we're all in green today, Harold. Thank you for noticing. We're all in green today. Maybe I should change the background color of my lights to green. It's St. Patty's Day, don't you know? It is what it is. This whole week will be fantastic. I've got to have corned beef and cabbage on Wednesday. Deal with it. All right. That's it. This must be Assault Radio. Yes, it is. All right. Well, hold still. We'll be right back to you. Okay. Don't go anywhere. I'm going to put you back in the green room and then we're going to get ready to go back to this. All right. It's St. Patrick's Day. St. Patty's Day. I love my solar, but not because I'm an environmental nut. Solar works great in the cold. I'm only running my generator about an hour a day now already this year. Great. Did the Waffle House breakfast thing when I was in the heart of Dixie. We need a Waffle House in the Valley. I would agree with that. That every now and then you need a good Waffle House breakfast. You need a good Waffle House breakfast. Harold's like, that would explain the corned beef in the stores. Wait, you just didn't bother to check the calendar to see that it's near St. Patty's Day? Of course that explains the corn. That darling corned beef. It's so good. All right. I guess that's it. I'm looking forward to Tuckerman's talking about the ranked choice thing. I am looking forward to this getting certified and getting on the ballot, because then I think that's when the real fight's going to begin. But I think when we get there, I think it will be repealed. I think most people will be upset about it. Are upset about it enough right now to repeal it, is what I meant to say. All right. I'll stop talking. Sarah Montalbano up next, The Michael Luke Show. Common Sense Radio.
Buddy, put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Hi there, ho there, hey there. Welcome to Monday. It is the Michael Dukes Show, broadcasting live across the state of Alaska. This is your favorite radio station and or FM translator, and live around the world on the internet, the interwebs, at michaeldukeshow.com. We also simulcast on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. I mean, I could be other places too, but who needs more of me? I mean, nobody, really, this bright and early in the morning. Welcome to the program and welcome to Monday. We just finished up. Interesting show with lots of headlines that I can't even think about right now. But hour two is a whole new critter. We're moving on. We're talking about education and more. Joining us this morning is Sarah Montalbano. I just love saying her name. I don't know why. It's just there's something about that. Montalbano. She is with the Alaska Policy Forum. She's got a new title, and I've already forgotten it. Sarah, so you're going to tell me what it is. She was the education analyst, like the head cheese about education, but now you've grown up. They grow up so fast. She's up in the world. What are you doing these days, Sarah?
Oh, thank you. I really ought to make head cheese my title, but I'm now policy manager at Alaska Policy Forum, covering our whole portfolio of stuff. So it's really exciting, but education has a special place in my heart.
It is. And anytime I get something on education, you're the first name that I think of. Followed closely by Corey DeAngelis from Reason, who I've been trying to get a hold of Corey because I wanted to bring him on for something, and I don't know if he's dodging my calls or what, but he's busy, apparently. Anyway, you are the two folks that I think of anytime we get into this education stuff. I actually reached out to Sarah here a couple weeks ago because I saw this article in Reason magazine, speaking of Reason, and why, although I will have to say this, can I just for a second tout on this? I thought it was interesting. I'm seeing more and more people quoting, especially in Alaska, quoting Reason magazine. I've been quoting them for years. I'm wondering, are we getting any traction? Am I exposing some people to free minds and free markets? Are they starting to listen and pick it up? Anyway, Reason magazine had a great article about Arizona and their school choice programs and what they've been doing. And now the fact that the governor wants to tear all that apart. So we're going to talk about that. But first and foremost, the Public Education's at a Crossroads report, which is Sarah's going to tell us all about it, and she's going to tell us about what Alaska's specific profile looks like. And then we'll spend the last segment talking about whatever Sarah wants to talk about for other things, since she's not just the education analyst. She's now the policy manager for the whole thing. We'll get into that. So, Sarah, talk to me about this Crossroads report. What's going on with this? What is it? What does it cover? And how did Alaska do in this regard?
Yeah, I really appreciate it. This is a fantastic report also by the Reason Foundation. They look at all 50 states from 2002 to 2020, and due to the lag in education data, that's as early as they could go, as soon to now. So they look at this and they look at staffing trends, student achievement, funding trends across the United States. What I found really interesting is Alaska's profile, because one of their big conclusions from the report is just that the states that are the ones spending the most aren't necessarily the ones getting the best outcomes. There seems to be really no relationship. And some states that are spending a lot are doing pretty well, and a lot of them aren't. So Alaska is definitely one of those where we're spending a lot. We've seen a lot of growth over the past, 2 decades, but we're not getting the outcomes.
And again, there was no correlation and causation because they highlighted several areas. In fact, some of the states that had the lowest spend on education were actually in the higher echelons of student achievement.
Yeah, absolutely. And Arizona, I'm sure we'll get to it, is one of those where they really didn't see a lot of funding growth through this time. They didn't see a lot of staffing growth. They broke that trend as well. But they are seeing achievement growth, especially among low income students.
What was the what did they discover in Alaska specifically? Do you want to highlight some of that, or what? What? Tell me what they discovered.
Yeah, yeah. So we can start with spending. I think that's obviously a huge topic right now. But Alaska's education revenues per student, there were almost 15,000 in 2002, and now we're up to about 20,000 in 2020. That's a 32% increase. That's 11th highest in the U.S. So we're definitely growing in revenues. Most of that growth, I want to say about 60%, is fueled by the employee benefits that you have to pay when your staff is growing, and those grew almost 125%. So more than doubling over that same period per student, and that's the ninth highest nationwide. So we're obviously seeing a lot of that. And when we look at what staff are actually being hired, it's not the teachers. We lost 6.8% of the number of teachers over that same time period. And we saw a growth in non-teaching staff, things like counselors and instructional aides and administrators. Those grew by almost 10%. So those benefits are not ending up in teachers' pockets. Those are growing pretty substantially. And all of this, we're seeing the achievements aren't coming out. I feel like I've talked to death the fact that we're 49th in fourth grade reading on the NAEP, but that is a decline from where we were in 2002. So
Right.
happy to dive more into that, but I want to say I've
Well,
said a
and
lot.
and I think the numbers say it all here.
Yeah.
When you look at the spending trends, and we've got the Reason Foundation report up on the screen. You can go back and watch it. If you're on the radio, you can go back and watch it on Facebook, or you can just go find it at the Reason Foundation Crossroads, the Crossroads report. When you look at the numbers, you see that there is just in revenue alone, because we keep hearing this narrative, right? The narrative is, of course, oh, we flat funded education. We flat funded education. We went from $15,000 per student in 2002 to almost $20,000 in 2020, which is 32% growth rate. Again, the 11th highest in the US. And yet, when you look at some of the other things like benefits and things like that, the growth rate on benefits for teachers, because we keep hearing about, oh, this is for the teachers, this is to retain them, this is to 124% increase in 18 years for teachers' benefits. That's a significant, that's a significant growth. This is just a few of it. And yet we continue to produce a product that is subpar. That's some crazy stuff, Sarah.
Yeah, I absolutely think so. And in the category of growth there, that's the least is spending on instruction. That's only about 20% growth over this time. Still 19th highest in the nation, but it's really falling behind the rest of the funding that we're putting out. And that benefits is also not just for the teachers. Like this is, healthcare and retirement and all of these, the life insurance, workers' comp, for all of the staff members across the state's public education system. And so when you're
Right.
seeing the growth in other places, a lot of this growth is just expanding in this, and we can't make promises like that we can't
Right.
keep.
Well, and the instruction would be dollars into the classroom, right? So it
Mhm.
increased by 20% over the course of 18 years. But the support services, which would be administrators, overhead, it grew by 50%.
Mhm.
49.9%. So 20% increase for instruction, but a 50% increase for administrators and overhead. Again, I can't help but wonder if we've just got an issue here with prioritization.
Yeah, and there's just so much debate about magic numbers that are going to fix things, but like we can see our priorities and the choices we've made over the past 2 decades. And I think this isn't an unusual situation across the United States. The rest of the states in this 50 state report, you can see all but one of them, I think, increased their revenues by quite a lot. But we're obviously up there, and we have to be asking, like, what are we doing here? Are we going to keep trying to do things that are clearly not working so far?
Any other big standouts in this report that caught your attention? If anybody you want to compare and contrast with here, so I can scroll through the report and we can take a look at it.
Oh, there's so many. I mostly focused on Arizona because we're going to be talking about Arizona today. But yeah, there's absolutely a ton of interesting stuff in this data. But the big conclusion is like, look, New York State, they're spending the most. They are not, their NAEP scores have been stagnant. They've been flat throughout the rest of this time. It just goes to show that these choices we're making and assumptions that things are going to improve with more funding is it just doesn't hold water with what we've seen here. There's got to be something else going on to see those NAEP gains.
It is frustrating. Now we've seen again, Arizona has been kind of on the bleeding edge of this whole debate over school choice, backpack funding, educational savings accounts, all these kind of things. And this kind of takes us into a tease of what we want to talk about next, which is the fact that, I would love to see a plan that essentially emulated Arizona's model, because again, it allows people to get the education savings accounts and then have that money follow the student. I would love to see a bill that would program that, because they've seen some significant gains in that. Tell us a little bit about how they are kind of breaking the mold in Arizona with that.
Yeah, Arizona's been on the leading edge of education choice things since the 90s. I think they were really early adopters of the charter school model, which we've seen largely in New Orleans when Hurricane Katrina came through and basically leveled their public education system, and they needed to try again. Arizona was also on the edge of that, as well as public school open enrollment, which is basically the practice that you don't have to go to your residentially assigned school district, and that really breaks a lot of barriers between the house that your family can afford, your zip code, and where you go to school. So that's been very positive, I think, for Arizona. The education savings account, I believe they started that in 2011, mostly for special needs, and then just a couple years ago, they opened it up for universal ESAs, where every student is eligible. And now they've got about 75,000 students who are utilizing it. Um, Happy to go more into the current events of things, but that's kind of the broad scope history of Arizona's work in the school choice space.
Well, let's dive down into the particulars here in just a moment. Let's do that, and then we will continue. Sarah Montalbano, our guest. She is the policy manager for the Alaska Policy Forum. We're talking specifically about education. And specifically, we're going to talk about Arizona up next with their information. We will continue in just a moment. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We'll return with more right after this.
What is that?
Common sense. Regularly heard on American radio. Michael Duke Show. Radio.
Okay. Welcome back. Here we go. Yeah, some of these numbers that came out of Alaska are just the fact that the administrative overhead grew by 50% while the student in-class funding only grew by 20%, to me is telling. And then, of course, that big number of the teachers' benefits. If we've increased it 124% over the last 18 years, how much do we have to increase it to retain teachers?
Yeah, I there's so many things that affect retention more than these actual like dollar value of the retirement benefits. And I would actually also point people to the Reason Foundation on this thing because their pension integrity project is doing so much good work showing that, when you survey teachers, when you survey employees, sometimes retirement benefits are last on their list behind things like healthcare and, being supported by administration and things like that. So I definitely think it's a really concerning problem that we have this retention and recruitment discussion, and it's only coming about with the assumption that again that more money is going to make things better. And happy to dive more into that, but that's one of the things I would say on that point.
Well, there was a study that I read about 3 or 4 years ago that was talking specifically about the workplace, not government, not education, but
Yeah.
talking about the workplace and those kind of things like retirement were always low on the list. It was always about what was the environment like, what was the administration and management like, what was the immediate benefits of pay or bonuses or merit, being recognized. From there's a lot of things that caused people to leave jobs that had nothing to do necessarily. I mean, even the base pay wasn't even at the top of the list, right? It was a lot of these other things that affected your day-to-day life. So I have to start asking the question, if we start seeing benefits going up 125% over 18 years and they're still not able to retain the teachers, there might be something that is more deeply systemic in the environment or the culture of what's going on in the schools.
Yeah, I would think so. And I think a lot of it too just reflects generational trends among young folks like myself, where it's like we're not going to be spending 30 years in the same job. And we want things that are portable. We want retirement that we can take with us. And that's just not how we've seen government jobs be set up. And I think trying to hold people there when we've just seen this generational shift is just not going to be effective.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think that's the thing. The one thing that they're not taking into account is that people who are like you, I mean, I think I was on the cusp of um, that generation that basically thought I'll do the same thing for 30 years. But of course, my generation, it wasn't that I was going to do the same. I'm going to do it with different companies for 30 years. And in your generation's case, it's like I might be doing different things. It's not doing the same job. It's maybe variations or tones or maybe something completely different. The average millennial is changing jobs like 12 or 14 times over their work life cycle. And I'm like, wow, that's a lot, especially when I look back and realize that I've only changed like twice in the last 30 or 20 years have I changed, two different things. And it was literally because I moved. It wasn't because I wanted to quit the job kind of thing. But it's astonishing to see. And it just seems like we're stuck in this old paradigm.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And finding out what actually attracts millennials and God forbid Gen Z workers to the workforce is going to be really something that we have to wrestle with and think like, is this still serving the purpose that was intended? Maybe it was working really well 30 years ago. I don't know, but it's not built to meet these needs. I think we've just seen a shifting in priorities.
Just Shana just said, I'm confused. I thought St. Patty's Day was on March 17th. Every day is Green Day around my
It's
house. Come on.
March.
It's March. It's everything is green. I love green. Sarah's actually got this. I think this is the same paint that I have in my office. It's called Savannah. It's a slight light. It's beautiful. Anyway, Sarah Montalbano, our guest, the Alaska Policy Forum. We're going to dive into some details here, and I'm going to let her run wild in just a second. So we're going to get into this. Like, share, subscribe, ring the bell, do all that kind of stuff. Let's get to it. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Oh, baby.
The Michael Duke Show. Seriously humorous with a pinch of intellect. Sorry. That is humorous. Here's Michael Dukes.
Come on, Sarah. There's a pinch in there, right? I mean, there's something. I mean, it's fine. It's fine. Welcome back to the program. The Michael Duke Show. Sarah Montalbano is our guest, and she is the policy manager for the Alaska Policy Forum, formerly the education policy analyst. Did I get
You
it
got
right?
it. You
That's
got
right.
it.
Education policy analyst. So whenever there's education questions, I think of Sarah to begin with. But we're going to talk a little bit about what APF's doing here in the last segment. But we're diving down into this Crossroads of Education report, and now we're talking about Arizona, because Arizona has been on the cutting edge of educational choice in the country, and they've been doing some amazing things. And it has really grown. I mean, it has grown. There's some interesting statistics. I see that their whole ESA program, which is their education savings account program, essentially the backpack funding program, now serves over 75,000 students. And in fact, 20% of the state's public school population is now in charter schools. I mean, they're doing some great things, and people are, for the first time, parents are happy, they're excited, and apparently this is why we can't have nice things, because Katie Hobbs, the governor of Arizona, wants to call a screeching halt to all this stuff. Give me some details here, Sarah.
It's so upsetting. I was really upset when you forwarded this article to me because I hadn't been following it really closely.
I
But
was
it,
so agitated when I sent it to you. I was like, "Can you believe this? I mean, come on."
yeah, it's incredible because Arizona has a really deep-seated school choice marketplace that they've grown over the past, 20 years or so. For the first leading edge of charter schools, education savings accounts they just got a couple years ago, universal, eligible to pretty much every student. And what we saw last year is Governor Katie Hobbs, a Democrat, came after Ducey, I believe, and she said, "Look, we want to, think about repealing this," and that failed. I think a lot of parents said, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, we really like this. This is serving our interests really well." But then back to the news point, this is what's happening right now. Uh, when you can't just get rid of something, you try to overly regulate it. You try to make it pull together and look like the public schools. And that's exactly the proposal happening in Arizona right now. Private schools would have to comply with certain things that bring them into line with public schools, including like minimum educational requirements for teachers, which I personally have a problem with because there's a lot of people with a lot of expertise. You're a physicist at Harvard and you can't teach a high school physics class without getting your teaching certificate. Things like that. Just tons of standards that way. But the most jarring thing about this proposal is that students would be required to attend public school for 100 days before receiving an education savings account. And the state would then be able to audit the expenditures of the private schools that are accepting this funding. So honestly, huge invasion of privacy. That 100 days is 100 days for that student where they could be suffering, they could be having a really hard time. That's 100 days they don't get back.
Right, exactly. And like you said, if you can't, what does it say? If you can't, well, I was going to say there's some kind of phraseology that I've forgotten. If you can't moderate, then you regulate. Essentially, they want to regulate this whole program out of existence. They can't eliminate it. There we go. If you can't eliminate, regulate. That was the whole point. So they can't eliminate it out of existence because it is so wildly popular. 75,000 students are participating in it right now. And so the answer is just to regulate it and down to the nth degree and make it. And there's been a huge amount of pushback on this, especially since Arizona has been held up and is now being emulated in some ways by other states, including Florida, talking about doing some of the same things. And it's astonishing. This goes back to, and I'm not going to put words in Sarah's mouth. I'll let her comment on this. But in my mind, as I said earlier, this goes back to the politicians and the education industrial complex realizing that this is something that is good, that people like, but it's also something that's out of their hands. It takes the ability from them to control it away. And that, I think, is the biggest part of this problem, right?
Yeah, I can definitely see that. It's such a difficult problem because, it's always pitted as you're taking funding away from the public schools if you do this. But, in reality, it's more unfair, I think, for a family to have to pay taxes once to fund the public schools and then pay again for a private school or whatever option works best for them. So I see a huge demand for these things, and especially over the past few years, I think Alabama actually just signed a school choice kind of voucher program similar to ESA's just like last week. So we're seeing so many states wanting to follow in the footsteps, and I don't think this is in Arizona going to go anywhere. I think there's definitely a lot of pushback, and I don't think that's going to happen. But seeing those attempts and seeing that it happens piece by piece. If they
Right.
can't pass this huge, regulatory package, maybe it's one thing. Maybe it's, you just say, yeah, you have to have these educational requirements. Who can protest against educational requirements? And then you see that just erosion of the program as it becomes standard. And that's kind of the trajectory of charter schools, I think. Charter schools across the nation have now become such a standard part of the ecosystem that now they're seeing a lot of regulatory burdens, and a lot of charter teachers and principals are saying, well, if I just open as a private school and accept ESAs or do a micro school thing, whatever it is, I don't have to comply with all of these regulations. So we're seeing a little bit of that, peak in the charter sector, I think, nationwide, where there's really deeply established charter schools.
Well, and on top of this, when you look at the results, that's what gets me is the results, because they talk specifically about this in that same similar time frame, that 18-year window. Arizona students made pretty significant gains overall against, for the NEEP, right, for the actual achievement. They saw some pretty good sized gains in reading and math, and not just in for regular students, but also for low income students. Give me some details on that.
Yeah, it's really exciting. Arizona is in the top 10 for achievement growth along the NAEP, which, maybe the NAEP's not the perfect thing to use, but it is what's comparable across all 50 states. So we'll use it here as a proxy for student achievement. But yeah, between 2003 and 2019, fourth grade reading and math grew by 7 and 9 points. And you've probably heard me say this before, but just remember that 10 points is roughly about an academic year. So that's a huge growth for students. It's most of a year. And, low income academic growth, they're actually outpacing the rest of the students there. Fourth graders eligible for free and reduced price lunch. That was 8 and 9 points in reading and math, respectively. So almost a year again. And, eighth graders grew more than a year in math. So it's really exciting. And all of that, Arizona's per student revenues are not growing very fast. It's only 4.2% across that 2002-2020 time span. So that's 47th nationally, and they're still seeing these NAEP gains. And I
Right.
would say a lot of it is due to the school choice competition and atmosphere and the fact that students are getting what they need to succeed.
Well, and on top of that, it's not just the overall revenue, which grew at 4%. Their support services. We were talking about this 50% growth in support services in Alaska. When you look at what came out of Arizona, they only had a 15% increase in growth. So they were 35%, 25% less than we were, and their capital as well, because again, more people are homeschooling. School districts are not responsible for larger buildings or more schools. They had a 17% decrease in their overall capital costs. I mean, just overall, these numbers are all great, and yet their growth is huge as far as in their scholastic achievement.
Yeah, and all of this is when Arizona's enrollment grew 25%. So they've managed to not add staff at the same rate, and nationally that is usually double. You usually end up adding about 2 staff for every student, which is just nuts. Like your growth rate is usually double that. But Arizona's bucking that trend, which yeah, again, due to these competition effects and all the students who are utilizing these options.
It's sad to see when something like this is working. It's sad to see this pushback and this attempt to try and to minimize that and to eliminate it through the regulatory process. It speaks to me, quite honestly, of kind of that sour grapes mentality of we don't have it, we can't control the money, we can't control the children, so we're going to regulate it until, well, essentially until we can.
Yeah, yeah, it's really discouraging because so many of these students are really getting what they need. I think that in the Reason article, they highlight a charter school specifically for students with autism. Uh, that kind of option is just so hard to come by when it's a traditional public school education. And they say, well, traditional public schools. I think one of the provisions in this proposal by Governor Hobbs is to say, well, these private schools have to provide the same special ed services, and that ignores the fact that a lot of special ed students leave the public school system because they're not getting what they need there. So having those specialized options and just having a marketplace that can respond to that, it's incredible and it's really discouraging. And I think, there's just sour grapes is probably the best word for it. Just that
Yeah.
you trying to bring them back to options that aren't working for them, and just so you have that funding in your school. Like that's crazy to me.
Right. Well, and I think David asked the relevant question: why is the K-12 public educational system so afraid of competition? It Why? Well, because it just wants to maintain its monopoly hold on that children's education, because that is a huge it is the largest expenditure, 2.8 billion dollars, 2.9 billion dollars in the state of Alaska alone spent on education, the largest single item that we're spending on. Yeah. Of course they want to keep control of that. They don't want competition. This has been the pushback on things like charter schools. I mean, Alaska charter schools have done just tremendously. And so the governor is attempting to expand that program by allowing for more, for a higher level review of charter schools. Because again, I think we understand that, again, the K-12 system is afraid of education. And if the only way you can get a charter school is to get the same system that's afraid of competition to approve it, it's not going to work. And so that's why he's asking for a state board or a state decision on that. I mean, am I misstating that, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think we've talked about charter school authorizers before, and the idea that having multiple authorizers is a good thing because, when it's the local school board, local school district that controls that decision, you don't have any recourse if you're turned down. You can continue to try and make your application, fantastic so that they just can't refuse you. But I think there's a lot of good ideas and that there would be demand for those good ideas that can be roadblocked. So what I believe the governor's proposal is to create this kind of direct application path to the State Board of Education. State boards often in other states are also authorizers of charter schools. So I think this is definitely something we can learn from.
Well, and especially given what just recently happened in Anchorage with one of their most popular charter schools being basically dechartered because the school district and the school board were, I think, unhappy about the success of that program. Now, effectively, what's happened is they lost 800 students out of the school district because the parents said, no, we're going to do it on our own then, if that's the case. Which again is it just harms the system even more. This is just another example of why having another body that would be able to authorize charter schools, I think, would be a good thing.
Yeah, I agree completely. And there's all sorts of difficult decisions made, but at the core of it, a charter school ends up being more accountable than traditional public schools because they can have their charter authorized and because they can not authorized again, and they can be shut down if they're failing to meet the terms of their contract. And what do we see in a traditional public school? For the most part, they just get more money if they're failing.
Right.
And that is what I really love
Well,
about the charter school model.
they get no money. They get more money, but with no accountability. right? They don't get, oh, you're failing, so you need more money. So we'll give you more money if you show us a plan as to how you're going to fix this. Oh, no, we couldn't do that. You just give us some more money and we promise we'll do better with it. And so far, not impressed with the results of that, right? I mean, again, going back to the Alaska numbers, a 32% increase in funding just in revenue over the last 18, 19 years. And of course, I don't know, another third of for administrators and overhead and everything else, and barely any of it making it into the classroom. It's it's interesting. Yeah, free markets in a school system, shocking. I know. That's why would you do that? There we go. Sorry about that. It wouldn't allow me to control the volume. I was like, that's loud. Wouldn't do anything. All right, we're continuing here. Sarah Montalbano, our guest, policy manager for the Alaska Policy Forum. I'm going to give Sarah free reign in the next segment if she wants to continue to talk about this or anything else that the Policy Forum is working on. We'd love to, again, she's more than just education. She's more than just another pretty face for education. She's got a lot of stuff going on. So let's check in with her next, and we'll figure out what else the Alaska Policy Forum's working on. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio.
Listened to by more staffers in Juneau than any other show, because their bosses told them to. And after what they just heard, oh man, they're going to be pissed.
You're a bad, bad man.
The Michael Duke Show.
Okay. It's not, Harold says, it's called not violating the civil rights of students. Educate yourself before you bring your ideas to the table. I don't know why people would say that you couldn't offer choice and that the choice would somehow violate the civil rights of students. How having more choices would not equalize or offer equal education to everyone. If you have more choices, that parent could do anything that they want with that money, to educate their child. How would that be? How would that be a violating the civil rights or some kind of unequal ability? If everybody's getting the same, I mean, that's an equal, to me, that would seem to be an equal opportunity there.
Absolutely. I largely see it as a worldview situation, honestly, where it's like, well, we don't need to all enjoy the same thing. It's kind of the Cadillac problem that we talked about in occupational licensing. Well, I'm not going to let you buy a Toyota because a Cadillac's better, and then you just get priced out of the Cadillac entirely, and you have nothing. So it's definitely like you ought to be able to choose these things because it's your child, it's your family. These are the options that are available to make things work best. And there's a lot of students who are not being well served by public schools. And even if they are, public schools should just be one choice out of many.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I think, again, the more choice you have, the better. I mean, I'm always about a plethora of choices is always better than a monopoly. And that's what we have right now. We have a school monopoly. Things like distance education programs, they started to break that mold 20 years ago.
Mhm.
Correspondence schools, private schools, all those things, were there. But that distance education, things like IDEA and Raven and Cyberlinks and some of those, they started to break that mold. And I would love to see us get to the point of where we're emulating Arizona in these education savings accounts, because then you could do whatever you need to. And if you, again, giving more choice to more choice is always a good thing. More choices is always better than less choices, in my opinion.
I agree completely, and I think anyone who walks into a grocery store should feel the same way. Honestly, it just why don't we run things like this? Why would a free market not work in public education?
Right.
There's just so many considerations that we act like it's special and that competition is not going to do anything. But Arizona, we can clearly see that it's helping.
I'm sorry. I shouldn't engage, but sometimes you got to feed the
The
trolls
chat's
something.
fun today.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
spicy, a little spicy. The way we fund schools is the law, which can change, by the way. Laws can change. I just thought I'd point that out to you. And it better protects our students from all these strange ideas of let's compete, because you definitely shouldn't teach children about competition. We shouldn't. Everybody should get a trophy because nobody should learn about competition. Let's send our kids to a better school. Well, I don't know about you, but I want to send my kids to the absolute best education that they can get, whether it's a regular school, brick and mortar, whether it's a micro learning, whether it's a pod, whether it's a teacher share, or whether it's just homeschooling them ourselves. I want my kids to have the best thing that I believe is there for them. What the hell? How is teaching competition a bad thing? Sorry, that's my comment. Sarah, I'll let you comment on that.
Oh, I would largely have to agree with you. I think it is incredibly just difficult to ask a parent to say, I don't need to. I will send my kid to the traditional public school that's not serving their needs, so that eventually public schools in 30 years maybe have improved because I kept sending my kid there. That's I don't think any parent's decision making process. I think you
Right.
do need to prioritize your children and your families, and you know best. By the
Yeah.
way, the experts in the public school system, they're not as expert as you think because they don't know your child.
And as I said before, if you're going to fight a battle over something like this, if you're going to fight a battle over it, do you want your kids in the middle of the battlefield, or do you want them behind the lines where they're safe? Right. I'm not fighting a battle I'm not fighting a battle over schools while sending my kids to this, be out there in the middle of it getting riddled full of bullets. I'm not going to do that. That's just not how it works. But that's how it works. All right, Sarah, what are we going to dive into here next? You mentioned occupational licensing.
I did.
Sorry. What are we going to hit on next?
Oh gosh. I mean, I'd be happy to continue the discussion kind of related to teacher pensions and retirement
Sure.
benefits, things like that.
Whatever's
Occupational licensing is also exciting to me, but I haven't prepared any notes about
okay.
any of this. So
All right.
you've got me flying blind.
We'll continue with the education and the pensions and stuff like that because that's easy. I don't want to, but yeah, I mean, this is good. All right. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. We're going to continue here in just a moment. The Michael Duke Show. I mean, I just feel like sometimes people like Harold are like, oh, but don't worry about that. Don't worry. This is fine. This is just fine. Don't worry about it. Sarah Montalbano, our guest. Here we go.
The Michael Duke Show, proudly splitting the left versus right dichotomy. Yeah, I had to look that word up too. I don't think it means what he thinks it means. Here he is, though. That guy, Michael Dukes, the one with the show.
But that word is actually dichotomy. It's that come on. I'm fracturing the left versus right. See, I don't think he was using the same dictionary that I was. Oh, well, it's all good. Sarah Montalbano, our guest, policy manager at the Alaska Policy Forum. And we're going to continue on education because I didn't want to hit her unprepared. She prepared education. Let's not go to. We should have her back to talk about occupational licensing because that's one of my pet peeves, man. Anyway, but let's continue on with education. Pensions, benefits. I mean, this is a big deal, right? Now the discussion is on. Well, we need to find benefits back because that's going to retain more teachers. And yet, again, going back to the previous numbers, which I pulled down, unfortunately, but I'll put back up here for just a second. There we go, Alaska, right here. When you look back at this and you realize that we have already increased the teacher benefits over the last 18 years, we've already increased it by, again, 124%. 124%. In teacher benefits. Now, that's not just retirement. That's retirement, healthcare, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But that's just that. So how much, if we've increased it 124% over 18 years, as I asked earlier, how much do we need to increase it to actually to retain teachers, Sarah. I mean, how much more do we need? Does it need to be 150% instead of 100, or, is it 200%? How much do we need to increase it? What's it going to take?
I don't think there's any such magic number that exists, and I think it's just an incentives problem. Like, we're looking at, what let me back up. There's a study roaming around in Juneau right now that's basically looking at retention rates of defined benefits teachers, and looking at those under the DC plan. And we look at those and we say, well, maybe the defined benefits, they had better retention rates. Maybe it's related to the fact that they were in the DB plan. First of all, very hard to establish that causality. This study doesn't do that. The second part is that we're not thinking about the age of these workers. Those in the DC plan, they joined more recently and they're younger, and they're reflecting these different employment patterns that, frankly, characterize it as job hopping, as if you'd like. But that is a lot of the behavior we're seeing, is just this kind of, you stay for a couple of years, you get what you'd like out of it, you have a good salary, good health care, you're not thinking about retirement so much because you're younger, it's not as high on your priorities list. And that's, I think, a large part of the phenomena we're seeing here, is just that we don't have that causality link, and it's going to be very, very expensive to go back to defined benefits.
Well, and again, we know it's going to be very expensive, she says, but we don't really know, right? It passed the Senate with an inaccurate and incomplete fiscal note, and it's like one of those things like, well, we got to pass it to figure out what's in it or how much it's going to cost. And we're waiting for the new number because apparently there was a new number, but the Reason Foundation said their estimates were something like $9 to $10 billion over a 10-year period.
Yes, yes, and last year when they did these estimates, it was only 8.6 billion. So now we're up, I wanna say, at 9.6 billion. A large part of that is because this SB 88 has a buyback plan. So if you're able, if you're in the DC plan right now, you can convert a lot of your savings into the DB plan. And so that past service requirement is going to really add to these costs. The other thing I think the Reason Foundation does really well with their pension modeling is they actually look at what is expected to be the growth rate on the return on investments, because a lot of pension plans, and this proposal is one of them, are really optimistic about the rate of return they're going to get on those investments. I want to say the um, last year's pamphlet was about a 7.25% return on investment. That's pretty optimistic. That's optimistic even compared to what other pension plans are assuming. And considering that the rate of return has actually been about 5 or 6%, that gap widens significantly. And so that adds to the costs that you're promising, but you aren't actually making the money to pay them out.
Well, and I will remind folks that the first time we were in the defined benefits program, and one of the reasons why we got out of it is because of actuarial miscalculation when on the rate of return and other things, where that not only was the cost of the benefits spiraling out of control, because that's the one thing you can never truly predict is what the defined benefits means. You're going to get benefit X. We have no idea what it's going to cost in 20 years, but we're guaranteeing we're going to pay for it. Healthcare at that time was spiraling out of control. And on top of that, you had the actuarial misconduct where they made mistakes in the assumptions of what their rates of return were going to be and everything else. And we still owe $6 or $7 billion to the previous defined benefits program. So now you want to roll it into a new one with these pie in the sky assumptions on rates of return?
Yeah.
That's insane.
It's nuts. It's absolutely crazy. And this is coming at a time when other states are starting to reckon with their pension plan debts, and they're looking to Alaska and saying, "Wow, this defined contribution thing, maybe that's working." And they see us stepping backward. If you're a reader of the Wall Street Journal, you should check out the editorial board did a really good piece talking about this defined pension stuff. And honestly, the Reason Foundation has done so much modeling. It's going to be very expensive, and we don't know that it's going to affect retention. There's a lot of factors that come into retention, and we can't establish any sort of causal link between these things. And when we try, it's a, well, maybe maybe this would help, maybe it wouldn't.
Right.
Uh,
It's
But let's try something at the cost of $9 billion.
super amorphous, right? Let's add it. Let's add $9 billion to the amount of debt. I mean, that would take it right back up to what, 16 billion in unfunded liability in the future. And that, again, some of those costs are assuming these high rates of return. What if the rate of return is 5? What if something craters and it's only a 4% return instead of a 5 or a 5.5% return? What happens then? We're all left holding the bag because the Constitution of the state mandates that becomes a contract. And where are they going to take it? Well, they'll take it from the corpus of the permanent fund because we got the money. That's what the judge will say. You've got the money. The Constitution guarantees it. You got to pay it. End of story. That's a constitutional obligation. And again, that's just nuts, especially as you just pointed out with the new we keep trying to do things in the old way. Right? We're not looking at it's like everything was created, during the boomer generation, and now it's like the millennials and the Gen Zs and everybody else. They've got a totally different mindset on jobs and retirement and everything else, but we keep acting like it's all the same, and it's not. It's not the same at all.
Yeah, things have changed a lot, and I don't mean to be, the young folks lecturing the older folks here, but it is definitely a different situation. I think for a lot of young people where they're looking, they're not getting, the salary increases that they want, so they have to look elsewhere for a job, or they go into public service and they think, wow, this is going to be great. I get to work on a mission that's important to me, and then they have to jump for the private sector because that's actually what's paying them a good salary. So I really do think that there's a lot of ways we can work on addressing retention, thinking about the things that are most important to young people that would potentially retain them, like salary and good healthcare benefits and things like that. That's what we should be thinking about rather than the retirement benefits they're not thinking about for another 30 years.
If Sarah Montalbano was queen for the day and could wave your magic wand and make those decisions, what would your suggestions be? Would it be a bonus schedule? Would it be an increase in salary? Would it be a more gold-plated, healthcare benefit? Or what are your thoughts here? We got about 90 seconds.
Sure. I'm never a fan of bringing all of these things to bear without thinking carefully about the costs. But one of the things, and I think there's actually a bill in the House that would propose this. But teachers have opted out of Social Security, like alternative payments. If they want to opt in, like that's something to a different plan, not Social Security. I don't think anyone should be counting on Social Security for all that much longer. Yeah, but there are ways to make the DC plan better that are more attractive and aren't going to cost nearly as much. So that's definitely one of them. And then thinking about the actual work environment, because I think a lot of Gen Zs, a lot of millennials, the pandemic forced us to think very carefully about what's important. And for a lot of people, that's just not the work, or it's, I want work that has meaning and that's important to me. Things like that. So make it a better environment.
No, I know that bill is out there to make the DC better, the defined contribution plan better, because that's what the Reason Foundation suggested. I think it's a good suggestion. We'll have to deal with this more. Maybe next time it's occupational licensing, huh, Sarah? Maybe that's what we
Please do. I would love it.
The Michael Duke Show continues. Sarah Montalbano, thank you so much. We appreciate it. Tomorrow, folks, Brad Keithley, Chris Story. On Wednesday, Chris Story again, and Mike Shower. And then some stuff on Thursday. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio. Sarah, any final thoughts here before we let you go for the day? I mean, I think I just always appreciate having you on, so I want to say that first thing.
No, I appreciate it.
What do you say?
There's a chat comment here. Give them some puppies. Honestly, not a bad idea.
Give them a puppy.
The quality of life thing's pretty important, but no, in all seriousness, there's so many ways we can talk about this that are productive, and I really do hope we continue to have productive discussions about education, because now we're finally not just talking about that magic number, we're talking about the other options that might work and expanding things like that. So I love it. This is always a good time. I'm just flattered you're thinking of me before Corey DeAngelis. Honestly.
Well, hey, you at least answer my emails. That's all I'm saying right now.
Hey, not bad.
You're talking about giving everybody a puppy. All I could think of is all the teachers' lounges looking like the Google workspace, where they've got the bean bags
Napping
and the
pods.
loungers and the napping pods and all. It's all I could think of. Maybe that's what we need to give them. We need to give them like a Google workspace for the teachers' lounge. Maybe that'll help them. Sarah Montalbano, thank you so much. I would like to talk about. I know we're joking about it, but I would love to talk about occupational licensing. Maybe
Please.
here in a week or so, if you've got time, we can do that. And then anything else, maybe you should give us a hit list of all the stuff the policy form's looking at,
You
and
got it.
we can go ahead and look at all that and go over it.
Yeah.
So thank you so much
Yeah.
for coming on
Email
board.
me. I will answer.
Happy St. Patty's Day to you. All right.
Yes.
We'll see. When Irish eyes are Montalbano doesn't sound much like an Irish name, but you've got the look. So
It's not. And I have had people stop me when I was a kid, and I was like, "Why do you think I'm Irish?" Oh, it's the red
yeah,
hair. Of course.
red hair,
Oh.
pale skin, green eyes. You got it all. You got it
Very
all.
confusing as a child, though.
You're the triple threat. That's what it's all about. All right. Well, thank you, Sarah. Appreciate you coming on board.
I appreciate it.
For being a part of it. Thank you so much. All right, folks, that brings us to the end of the show today. We will be back tomorrow. Again, Chris Story and Brad Keithley. Chris is going to come on Wednesday as well and talk about a tax plan, a tax idea that he has for the peninsula for property taxes. He wanted a whole segment. We're going to give it to him. We're going to talk about that on Wednesday. The Michael Duke Show. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a great day.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Duke Show.
you.